Today on the Feeling Up podcast, we have former regional director of the Southeast region for Keller Williams, now new director of leadership and growth for KW Austin, Mike Ray. He talks with us about being in a transitional state, the importance of having difficult conversations, and being authentic as leaders. Let's jump in.
Welcome back to another episode of the Feeling Up podcast, humble lessons in life and business. We started the intro and then these two yahoos showed up. So thank y'all for being here. I'm here joined by my co-host, Bethany Vooys. We got guests with us, Phil Kingsley, Mike Ray. So thank y'all for joining us today.
Glad to be here.
We are in Austin, Texas, right? You two literally just got off the plane.
Here.
Right?
Yes.
Yeah.
So welcome. Glad to have you. So Mike, tell us a little bit about yourself. You're our guest here. We want to make sure we introduce you and let everybody know who you are.
So I'm kind of, at this point for a podcast, I'm kind of in a transitional state. So I'm still the official regional director of the Southeast region of Keller Williams. And I'm also the new director of leadership and growth for KW Austin, which is a group of market centers here in Austin, Texas. And I'm doing both roles, at least through the end of this month that we're recording in.
Well, we already missed
Keeping us busy.
Already missed you in the Southeast. With regional directors, you never quite know what you're going to get.
That is a fair statement.
And
Yeah.
so when you stepped into the role, I was grateful at how quickly you warmed up and really went to bat for us, right? I always
Thank
felt like
you.
you were in our corner.
Well, thank you.
So if I have a problem, I'm still calling you.
Call me anytime. That's right.
Yeah. So we're talking about failure today. Real quick, though, for our audience and people listening, Bethany, you want to introduce yourself real quick?
Yeah, I'm Bethany Vooys. I'm the Vice President of Strategic Development for Level 8 Platform, which is a agent service company that focuses on helping business owners scale. And I'm excited to be here doing this podcast again.
I'm excited. I came up with our elevator pitch.
Yeah. What is
It's just, we're leverage.
Leverage. That's right.
It's just simple, right?
I know. I was
Leverage,
going to say,
leverage.
we just solve all your problems, but I like yours better.
That's right.
That's pretty good.
Mr. Phil,
Yes.
you want to introduce yourself, brother?
I will. Yes. I'm Phil Kingsley. I'm the CEO for the Huffaker Group, which we are an expansion organization there in the Southeast, and the CEO for Sales Fox, which is a coaching and consulting organization within Level 8.
Awesome.
Glad
Thank
to be
you
here.
guys for being here. Yep, we appreciate that. So, Mike, let's hop in. This podcast is about failing, right? And we've done a lot of podcasts, or we listen to a lot of podcasts about people's success and all the the end zone dances. But we wanted to kind of take a different approach, and really, we know that we fell our way to success, right? That the failure is a process. So, when you think about failure, what does that mean to you?
So, it can mean a lot of different things. Honestly, it's not just about not meeting a goal or making a mistake. I mean, failure can be in a lot of different ways. It can be not being your best you. It can be you not leaning in the way you're supposed to, or owning something the way you're supposed to. To me, that's my definition. That's me defining who I am and gauging, am I a success or am I not? Am I leaning towards success? So to me, that's failing. So if I'm not all in, if I'm not owning every part of whatever I'm responsible for, then I consider that not 100%. So that's failing to me.
Yeah, I love how you.
That's like an extreme ownership, I guess.
Yeah. Well, and I love how you put not being, all you or the authentic you or the full you.
Full of me. Yeah.
And man, I think about that and I go there's just some days I wake up and I just don't have the gas in the tank to be the full me.
Yeah.
Right. And I don't know if it's as I'm getting older or just, you leave it all out on the field every day. Right. But how do you handle that when you don't feel it, right? When you're not the full you?
So, something I don't talk about very much at all. We all talk about real estate because that's what we're in. But where it shows up sometimes in your personal life is where you feel it the most.
Yeah.
And I have very rarely spoken about this, but in the last few years, I've gone through a divorce. And that's a very personal thing.
Sure.
And you can, you can read lots of books about your balanced life and not sacrificing your family for work and all kind of things. And so I could analyze a divorce a whole bunch of different ways, but to me, not owning that relationship the way I needed to, was it all my fault? No. Was it all her fault? No. But did it happen? It happened.
Right.
And so A lot of people in the world would define that as a failure moment. And for me, it's been a lot of self-analysis, a lot of self-reflecting. How could I have shown up better in that relationship? Where should I have shown up better in that relationship so that I could have protected that more? So it shifted gears now to both of us where we're co-parenting kids and making sure they're having the best life they can be. But that's a personal example of where I would see it not showing up, where I was not 100% who I needed to be.
Well, and I'm sorry you had to go through that. I know that's not easy. It's challenging in our world to make it when I know for me, even if I'm just I hope y'all know this, but sometimes spouses argue.
Yeah.
And
No
just
way.
when I'm in a dispute, when my wife is telling me that I'm wrong, is more or less.
And when she's right.
And she is right. Let's be honest.
That's right.
But when that's going on in my world, it's really difficult for me to be all in on other things, right?
Yeah. And I think a lot of times it can be very personal or it can be the professional side, but it's the idea of not leaning in to the relationship, having the hard conversations, the fierce conversations so that you can move beyond it. So we just let it sit there because we don't want we don't want the conflict. We don't want the disruption in our lives because we don't want it to spill over into other parts. And so we ignore it. Yeah. That's what we end up doing. And when you ignore things, they just get worse.
Well, in hindsight, reflecting on that, is there anything like just as a growing moment for yourself or for people listening? Are there things that you can see now, right? We talk about our failures of over the last few years and how that's showing up now, or maybe how you can see it's directed you. Are there certain things you can see in hindsight that maybe you wish you were aware of at the moment?
Absolutely. Yeah. A lot of very personal things, for sure. Lots of things that we walked through in our relationship that we should have dealt with differently. And again, it's that idea of not dealing with it, not having the hard conversations, not being willing to lean into fixing what needs to be addressed. Yeah. And those things tend to not get better. They just become a cancer and something. Yeah. So
they're hard conversations.
Yeah, it's real, but that's real.
Anybody that's married,
it's real.
Knows that moment of just not wanting to have the conversation. And I think we're all guilty of both. Sometimes you do put it off, right, and other times, you get in there and you take the emotion and you battle through it.
It's like that anticipation of what. We play out the conversations in our head, but we do it all. We all lead people in this room, and we do that with people we lead as well. The avoidance of it. Yeah. It's like, we don't want to have this conversation because it does feel a little bit, you could say, am I failing? What have I done? Why is this person not performing better? Why is this relationship not stronger? Sure. Why is this not better? And so you start to overanalyze it and avoid it.
Mike, I think I've heard you one time we were on a leadership panel together and you referenced this story and you kind of said it at the beginning of just being authentically you. Because I've seen that show up in my own life, right? And going through a divorce and you're struggling so much personally. I know it's super hard to show up elsewhere, especially if you're a leader. And you tell this amazing story about just being so authentic with the people you were leading about what was going on. Yeah. It has to be just so vulnerable. I mean, I'd love for you to share how that worked out for you.
Yeah, I was leading one of our market centers at the time, one of the Keller Williams market centers, and you can't be going through something in a really deep personal way and come to work every day and put on a front and be authentic. And that's just not who I am.
People who are close to you are going to know.
They know.
Yeah, they're going to.
And if those people know, but I don't open I could have chosen not to open myself up to everybody else. And if I had done that, I feel like what would have happened was they would have seen through that and it would have started to show up in other parts of the organization. So I stood up and told everybody what was going on. I stood up in front of a meeting. We live streamed it. We had several hundred people in the room. And I just said, here's what's going on. It wasn't the easiest moment, but I thought it was the most truthful moment. It was me being who I wanted them to see me to be, that they could be, they could bring that personal thing to work. And it was a safe space. Everybody's going through it.
Love that.
It was brave. That was brave, man.
In our failures, right? And in those moments, the anxiety and anticipation of perception of others is pretty strong.
Yeah, the whole idea that we're going to be judged because there are people who passionately would disagree with what I was going through or passionately disagree with what I had done.
But isn't it amazing a lot of times when you can be transparent like that? I think one thing I love about, and I don't know if it's a Keller Williams culture or just a culture we've created, sometimes I reference just how we try to support each other, at least in our region in the Southeast.
Yeah.
But when you do put it out there, 9 out of 10 seem to want to lean in and help, right? Like, I think we all can relate to the fact that, I try to tell my kids that are in high school, like, there's a time where people realize they're not perfect.
Oh, yeah.
High school might not be it.
Not a teenager.
But eventually everyone realizes that they have shortcomings and that we're all in this kind of together.
Right.
And so you see that show up in the combatants of failure. Phil, where do you see that come up with coaching clients, right? With some of these people that you're leading, of the avoidance of having the real conversation?
Well, I'd say this, coming back to those days when you don't want to show up, right? Or you don't feel like you can give everything. I heard something recently on a mindset that we did, and we do it every morning, but it stuck out to me where, like, for instance, if you don't want to go to the gym or you're not 100%, but you go in and you give 10%, it's better than not showing up.
Yeah.
Right. So you're always moving, you're rolling the ball forward.
That
essentially,
1%
right?
better every day.
Yeah. So I think the problem for us as leaders is the impact that we have on those around us when we're only at 10% and we're trying to do everything that we can, and it just doesn't come off well. So I think that's the challenge. But in terms of in my world and in coaching, the avoidance of some of those tougher conversations, it really does come back to the people, right? Is it worth it to have the conversation for the person that you're in front of, right? And are they clear on that? Like, do you understand the relationship that you have with them and the reason why we're going to have the conversation? Because I would say sometimes in relationships, whether it's a business relationship or not, sometimes we just wish it would go away. Maybe we don't talk about it, like it'll just go away. And someone's got to step up. Now, I'd say
that's not how that works.
Yeah,
I thought that was what was told to me before this podcast. So thanks for ruining that.
So I would say this. So like in my relationship with my wife, she's the one who's going to bring it up, right? I'm the one who is probably going to be avoiding the tough conversations. In business, I'm the one to bring it up, right? So I think there are, in different arenas, we probably play a little bit differently.
Yeah.
I would also say, though, overall, if it's worth it to have the conversation, then you've got to step up and you got to do it. Right? Whether you feel like showing up or not.
You role model really well. To me, leadership is showing up every day, and that it's not actually doing something, but actually being really authentic every single day and making it an environment, because the good stuff happens in the real conversations, right? And I think we have clients and as leaders, it's easier from the outside to hear that rhetoric and identify it. Versus myself, I will tell myself stories in order to justify not having a conversation, right, or not doing something. And so it's that as leaders, one of the real keys, in my opinion, is showing up every single day and being willing to not let that just sit there, right? When you see it, being willing to have the conversation if it's appropriate. There's other times, I think, where we allow the rhetoric to happen because maybe there's other things going on. And maybe sometimes the story is a safe space for someone, right?
Yeah, but letting people know that you're having a 10% day is okay too.
I struggle with that.
But just saying, you know what, Bethany, today I'm just not in a good space. I know we need to have this conversation. Right. I know you need this from me, and I can't do this today. Yeah. So that's
I have that conversation with her every morning.
I was going to say
every day.
Every morning. It's crazy. We have so many 10% days. Maybe I'm concerned. No, but to your point though, I think as leaders, right, and I know you have had so many leadership roles, there's this authentic leadership that's happening with that extreme ownership that you kind of referenced, even in failure, that whether you know it or not, right? Because I remember being on that panel with you and just you being honest in that moment just breathes life into a room to people who are listening to you, to allow them to be authentic. And like, what a gift. And I don't always think that people realize that that's what you're doing. Right.
Yeah.
Because failure is so scary to talk about. And there's this judgment, but
it is,
it's this freedom that you're able to give back to people. And so I'm sure that's what your market center felt that day. And anytime you share that story, what an incredible gift to share.
Well, thank you.
Well, it's so difficult to connect with someone, right?
Yeah.
We recently got out of business with a gentleman, and you just couldn't get to the real him, right? The real authentic person. And for all the great things that he brought to the table, like if I can't, like when someone is leading, like we have to be able to have those conversations, right? Like we want to be able to, nobody can connect to the perfect person, right? Like we all have shortcomings. We all have challenges. And so I think owning that and being able to have conversations around that and really failing our way forward with it, right, helps us become, again, it's the journey, right, as we're going through it. Any advice or one piece of advice you might give to someone that's going through a real challenge right now?
I think be honest with the people around you. Share that. Don't hold it. Don't feel like you're in that journey by yourself, no matter what the challenge is. If you're dealing with a difficult staff member or a team member, share with somebody outside of your organization, get some advice, but talk about it. Don't hold it in. Don't try to walk through the challenge and the battle on your own. That's a terrible place to be.
Yeah, it's exhausting, right?
It is exhausting. And then you end up, it ends up coming out in other ways. I mean, it'll show up in other places. There'll be bursts of anger. There are lots of ways, emotional outburst, all kind of things that'll happen. So if you're going through a challenge, just make sure your circle's tight. That's why I tell people all the time that tight circle around you matters so much. You got to have those people, and challenging moment. That's where you really see the strength of your community.
All right, so wrap us up here. Let's fast forward. I love to ask this question. You're at the end of your days, and you're looking back on your life. What right now do you believe is going to be your biggest regret?
Biggest regret. I wish I had. I wish I'd started in the real estate journey of my life sooner. That's a regret. Right. I knew it was something I was interested in. I was in a different career field, and I wish I'd done it sooner. I think from a wealth building standpoint, from the knowledge that I've gained from this industry, I would be in a much different place at this point in my life. That's probably my biggest thing. I wish I had done this sooner.
All right.
Yeah.
I love that because I always believe not, I don't won't be probably a major regret, but like I've always loved new construction.
Yeah.
I've always loved building, and I'll build some houses here and there, but I'm not actually the one building them, right? And I think I would have loved that path. But it's like Jay and Gary talk about, right? Like, it doesn't matter who you are, how much money you have, you'll never be able to do it all, right? And so you kind of have to pick your path or whatever. Yeah. Mike, thanks for joining us. Thanks for sharing with us.
Great.
Thanks, Mike.
Appreciate y'all.